The secret to my roast potatoes is a simple fork. This is how my little nanny made them every Sunday with her beautiful roast lamb, and it's how I've been making them my whole life. They're not fussy, they're not difficult, just 3 simple steps produce roast potatoes that are crisp on the outside and fluffy on the inside. So whether you cook them in the air fryer or the oven, this technique works every single time. So actually any potatoes will work. But I usually just use the brush potatoes, which I believe are a Sebago in Australia. And you know, when you pick these out, try and get the firm ones. Sometimes if they're soft, they're bruised and they're a bit black inside. And I'm just going to go and peel them. I'm going to make a lot of roast potatoes today because I want to show you both in the oven and the air fryer. Now with the potatoes, I don't like cutting them too small because I think the fluffy interior is just as delicious as the crunchy exterior. And you want to cut them all about the same size. I mean, I don't cut them too big, but not too small neither. And some will be smaller than others, and they'll turn into those really delicious crunchy little bits that everyone enjoys. And that is a lot of roast potatoes. So I'll probably need 2 pots for this. And I place them into a big saucepan. Simply cover them with cold water. And I put about a teaspoon of salt in there just to put a little bit of salt in the potatoes, because I don't put too much in because I salt the potatoes whilst they roast. And now I take this over to the stove and bring them to a boil. And once they do come to the boil, I reduce the heat just slightly, but keep them at a steady boil, not vigorously, but steady. And what I do now, which is one of the tricks, is I boil them until they're almost at mashed potato stage. So these have been boiling away for about 15 minutes. They're getting there. If I pick one up with a skewer, it falls off the skewer. So that's a good sign. But they're still a little bit firm. I want them super soft. So perhaps another 5 minutes. These potatoes are almost at the stage where I would take them off and mash them. So I'll drain this one. And then I return them to the stove, and the stove's not on, but I just let them steam for about 5 minutes. And I'll check these potatoes, which have been on the same time. Yep. So I'll just strain this one as well. And I'll do the same thing and put this back on the stove. So they've been steaming there for 5 minutes now, and now what I do is I get a clean tea towel and I simply put the potatoes on. So now I leave them until they go stone cold. And that, you know, depending on your climate, might take a half an hour, or longer, it doesn't matter. This is the first thing I do before I put on a roast when I make a roast. So I'll come back to them when they're cold. So these potatoes are now stone cold, and this is the trick. All you have to do is get a fork and really get in there, and every side of the potato, fork it and pop it on a tray. Now if your potatoes oxidize a little bit or they've got bruising, they'll still roast fine. This one's a little bit black, but all you have to do is run a fork all over it. Now I'm really pressing it in here, so there's nice ridges all over the potatoes. So that's all I do, and you will be surprised how this makes such a big difference. And you know, maybe you know this already. Maybe this is what you've been doing. Now I've got my oven preheating to 220 degrees conventional or 200 degrees fan forced. And that's a very hot oven. And you need a hot oven because I want to roast these and make them crispy. The potato themselves is all cooked already. And they will be soft and some of them will fall apart, but that's okay. Those crispy bits are delicious. And you know, I don't find it necessary to heat the oil on the tray. They still turn out beautifully without doing that. And these little tiny bits, I'll just pop them on the tray. Now potatoes like a lot of oil or fat, whatever you want to use. I've just got some light olive oil here, but you can use super fry or olive oil or duck fat or whatever you like, but I just wanted to show you how they work with just plain oil. And potatoes need quite a bit of oil, but they'll only use what they need. So I douse each one in some oil and then sprinkle over some salt, which also helps crisp them up. And into the oven they go, and I won't touch them for about 20 minutes and then I'll have a look at them. And the air fryer ones won't take as long, so I'll just wait until they've had 20 minutes in the oven and then I'll put these on. And I just douse them liberally with oil as well and sprinkle them with salt. Now, a kindly viewer just told me recently actually that those blocks of super fry that you can see in Coles and Woolworths are actually 100% beef tallow. But actually I went to get some and they were all sold out. But I did find this, and the ingredients say animal fat. I have used this before and it is really tasty, but it's a solid. So I would melt either that on the tray in the oven first or just in a small saucepan and then douse the potatoes in that if I was to use that. However, I just wanted to keep it simple today to show you that you don't need any fancy ingredients to make really great roast potatoes. And also I find that the super fry, those sort of things, duck fat, add a different flavour. They don't necessarily make them any crispier. So these potatoes have had 20 minutes so far, and what I do at this stage is just turn them over. And if they look like they need a little bit more oil, douse a little bit more oil on top. And I'll just put just a tiny smidgen of oil on a couple of them that look like they need it. And back in the oven for at least another 20 minutes. And now to put these in the air fryer. And this air fryer has got a roast function, but it says 200 degrees Celsius. So I let it heat up, and these have already had oil and salt put on them. I'll just put a little bit more oil on top. Right, I'll check them in about 15 minutes. So these ones have been in the air fryer for about 14 minutes and they're starting to get some lovely colour on them. So I'll just turn them over. I'll give a tiny sprinkle of salt this side and pop them back in the air fryer. So these ones have had another 20 minutes in the oven now. These little bits I just take out because they're well and truly done. And you know what? They're the cook's treat. So I'm just going to turn them again, and look, seriously, you could eat them now. They're beautiful, but I'm just going to push them for another 10 minutes. But look at the colour on them. And I might fry some fish while they're in the oven. So the oven ones have had 50 minutes and they're well and truly roasted and they're crunchy. And these have had just 25 minutes in the air fryer and they're also crunchy, crispy and ready to eat. So they're the air fryer ones and these are the oven ones. And let me break one open for you. Look at the colour on that, they're just beautiful. And super hot, but I'll break one open, but look at that. Crunchy on the outside and soft on the inside. Thank you so much for watching. If you didn't know these techniques, I'm so glad you're here because I think once you try this, you won't go back. Hopefully I'll see you again soon. I've got hungry people at the table.